Hey, it's Ephruz, and welcome to my review of the ABKO Hacker K945P. Ever since I ordered my first mechanical keyboard, for the past few years I've been looking for the mechanical keyboard that has everything I want in it. This has been made even more difficult with the popularization of RGB LEDs and the growing number of different mechanical switches over that period of time. The Nova Touch was the closest I've come to that goal, but the loud clacking noises on some of the modifier keys, especially backspace, created for an inconsistent sound experience that drove me crazy. I've been told to buy a Real Force, but it's too expensive for me, right now at least, and keycap compatibility is limited. This prompted me to travel to foreign online retailers to find keyboards on there, and that's how I discovered this. Unless you're a mechanical keyboard enthusiast who has done a lot of digging, you've probably never heard of this brand. ABKO is a Korean computer hardware company, primarily focused towards gamers, that offers quite the variety of computer components and accessories, peripherals, audio, and PC cases, to name a few. And this keyboard, the K945P, a tankuless keyboard, also comes in a full-size variant, the K985P. They also offer both boards in 45-gram and 55-gram electrocapacitive switch variants. There is also a 10-keyless and a full-size version without LEDs, called the K935 and K965 respectively. My board is a 55-gram, 10-keyless RGB variant. I purchased the board from a seller on Gmarket and paid exactly 175,740 Korean won, which is at the time of the purchase about $156.98. This includes the international shipping costs, which were about 47,240 won of the total cost. One important thing I want to bring up is that when you purchase from Gmarket, similar to Taobao, your product gets shipped to a warehouse that will ship your product once you pay for the additional international shipping fee. Make sure to check your Gmarket account to see if your product has arrived at a warehouse and is ready to ship. In the box, you'll get a keyboard with a non-removable light gray, almost silverish, braided cable, which is unfortunate for the people that find a removable cable to be a necessity when bringing their keyboard somewhere else. The keyboard comes covered, but the plastic doesn't feel durable and it was broken in several places when I received it, so I haven't been using it to cover the board from dust. You also get a clear plastic keycap puller, would have liked to see a wire keycap puller, and a brush to clean the keyboard. This brush looks like a paintbrush that was rejected by quality control and repurposed. It's bent, the text isn't aligned or even printed fully, it came with a crack in it, and I even snapped it at the location of the crack while cleaning the board. Put some super glue on it and it's back to as normal as it'll get. I find this to be extremely convenient to come with the keyboard, but given you can find small paintbrushes at a dollar store, the inconvenience of the board not coming with this wouldn't be like if it didn't come with a keycap puller or a non-removable braided cable. Lastly, you get a small CD for programming the keyboard, more on that in a bit. I wish they just used a normal size CD, because I don't have a CD drive in my desktop, and my notebook uses a slim optical drive, which I can't put the CD in. Although it's probably out there somewhere, I couldn't find a download online, so I had to use someone else's PC that had an optical drive, and copy the files to a flash drive to use this on my desktop. I would have much preferred this came with a normal size CD. The keyboard is made by Plum, a Chinese OEM, and branded by ABKO. As far as I know, Plum is the only company that makes these electrocapacitive switches. You can even buy their Topra compatible stems with the red, wish they were clear or white, silencing rings on Taobao and AliExpress. The build quality of this keyboard is pretty good, but nothing to write home about. On a scale from generic Rubber Dome to Leopold Filco Vortex boards, I would say this board is much closer to the latter, slightly inferior to the Nova Touch, very similar to the build quality of Plum boards. There's little torsional flex, but you can tell the materials used for the board are cheaper than most, as the plastic does make noise when you twist it around, presumably from the top and bottom halves of the case, since the top half of the board is attached to the bottom half through clips and not screws. My board also came with a hairline crack right above the center cable routing spot that has yet to lengthen after a few months of use. I assume this came from international shipping abuse, and I would be inclined to believe the clear plastic that makes up the top half of the case won't take any further damage from your average user, as at most, the keyboard will be going through a rough ride in someone's backpack. I think the look of this keyboard is very subjective from user to user. I think there is a convenience in the top half of the case being clear, because if you wish to disassemble the keyboard, you know exactly where the clips are. However, I find the silver, whatever this is, under the clear top half to look mildly gaudy. I wish this were white instead, if the clear top half case is going to be kept. Alternatively, I wish the entire case was white, though I understand if the slight color disparity adds character to the overall look. Also, the silver has a grainy texture, so if it diffuses and reflects the RGB LEDs better than a normal whiteboard would, I understand why they went with this. The keycaps float above the case, which I've grown to become indifferent about when compared to cases that cover the sides of the keyboard. However, the RGB LEDs do bleed onto whatever table you're using the board on, especially if they're white, so again, I understand why this choice was made. The keycaps are 1.3mm thick PVT with double shot injections for the English legends. I'm unsure whether the Hangul and hotkey legends are dye sublimated or laser etched. You can't feel them, and this is the only point of concern if you were looking to type in Korean with this keyboard, as the legends may wear out over time. This has not happened to me after 2 months of use though. They seem to have a few issues coming off the mold. There's some what looks like shavings still attached to the bottom of the keycaps, but with all the keycaps on, you don't see this, even on the sides of the board where you can clearly see the bottom of the keycaps. Beyond that, they feel like normal PBT. They're OEM profile, which is my preferred profile for keycaps. However, I should note that if you intend to flip the spacebar upside down, the keycap does come in contact with the wire stabilizer, making a very unpleasant noise. I'm not sure if this would happen with other OEM profile keycaps, but this didn't happen with my blank white cherry profile keycaps. I'm going to talk about the switches now because the keyboard switch is just as important of an aspect to the build quality of the keyboard. And let me tell you, I love the switch. I don't know what's going on here, but the switch, keycaps, and board's construction are greater than the sum of their parts. The switch feels very consistent from key to key, and the silencing rings make the weight feel just right. Reason being, on a normal Toper switch with no silencers, there is a high weight threshold at the top that when passed, actuates the key. Silencing rings lowers the switch about 1mm, so they feel slightly lighter. Also, these switches don't seem to have a clip to hold keycaps, but they hold onto keycaps much better than any other stem I've used. I've reused the keycap set of mine so much that some keycaps fall off keyboards with worn down clips on the stems. With this board, they stay on just fine. There's no flex when typing, though you can get the frame to flex when you're applying or removing keycaps, and the taller nature of OEM keycaps make for a more consistent sound between rows, and the stabilizers don't make a lot of noise. I've since lubricated the stabilizers, even though they already come lubricated, and they don't make any noise with the exception of the spacebar. Here's a sound test of the keyboard. Now let's get into the features of this board. It comes with RGB LEDs with, in my opinion, limited customization. The keys are completely programmable with N-key rollover. The keyboard is also waterproof, meaning if you pour water on the board on the top part of the case, it completely covers the internal components and has a hole at the bottom of the board that liquids drain from. You may not have a mess on your desk, but at least you didn't kill your keyboard. The RGB LEDs come with the following presets. Function 1 cycles the colors between a static red, green, blue, yellow, magenta, cyan, white, or no LED. Caps Lock and Scroll Lock will display the color opposite to your static setting. So for example, if you have your LEDs set to red, Caps Lock will turn that LED cyan. However, with a white LED, the Caps and Scroll Lock will be blue by default. And with no LED, the same applies. Function 2 allows for, on a key press, either the individual key to light up, or for the key and its adjacent keys to light up, which is more commonly known as a firework effect. This can stack with a static color. Function 3 is a ripple effect, where you can either have multiple colors ripple out across the entire keyboard, or a single color ripple across one row like a laser. Function 4 is a breathing effect that cycles between red, green, blue, yellow, magenta, cyan, and white. Function 5 is a cycling effect that goes between each color without the breathing effect. Function 6 shows a bunch of demo LED effects that you can't control in any way, likely to showcase the dynamic range of the LEDs on a store floor. There is a radial RGB effect and a linear RGB effect, horizontal or vertical, a wiping effect that cycles between colors, an effect where two colors come towards the center of the board, combining their colors and going outward as the same color, an effect where single color collapses onto the K key, the key closest to the absolute center of the board, cycling between colors, a linear single color ripple effect, and a multicolored keyboard-wide ripple effect, and an I love you effect. Now, the problem with these settings is not the settings themselves, but the limited color options. Every single one of these effects only uses red, green, blue, yellow, magenta, cyan, or white. There's no randomness to the color of the LEDs, and there's no randomness to the use of the 7 basic colors of the LEDs. Ripple might seem random, but in reality, if you look at it closely, it just rotates the color cycle. There is also no raindrop effect, which I think is a necessity after Ducky made this effect so popular. If this keyboard had single row ripple effect or a cross ripple effect, like the ones on the Master Keys boards, with random LED colors, I would definitely be using that effect. Unfortunately, because it doesn't have a raindrop, or the effects I just explained, I find none of these LED effects to be completely satisfying, and I keep switching between effects only to be disappointed in them as I use them. I would probably be more satisfied if I could stack effects as well. The keyboard is also hotkey programmable, which you need the software for. Now, this software doesn't require an installation, so if you wish to copy the CD files onto a flash drive, you can do that, and alter your settings on any computer. The software also allows for static per-key LED backlighting, with access to the entire color spectrum. It seems like when you save and apply any settings made on the software, it reflashes the firmware to the keyboard. This is how they go around not needing the software always on for your profiles to function. So at the price I paid for it, which was shy of $160, it was cheaper than any Toper board I could find, including used or refurbished ones, and was a treat to use. Though, I can't help but think this keyboard is incomplete in terms of its features and RGB LED customization. I think the K945P with no LEDs, with the exception of a blue caps and scroll lock, and a much lower price of around $90 before international shipping fees, would be a much better option. Personally, I'd rather spend less and not have a feature I'm not going to use than have a feature only to always have it off because I don't use it or don't like it, and luckily ABKO offers that to their customers. So would I recommend this keyboard? There's only one condition. If and only if your preferred switch is Topra or some other electrocapacitive variant. Outside of that, if you wish to have an RGB backlit keyboard, there are better options in terms of customization like the IKBC F87 RGB, the Ducky 1 RGB, or the Poker. Alternatively, you can buy a Real Force RGB, but that keyboard is almost $300. So I understand at that price it doesn't really matter what a keyboard does, it might not be worth it to you, and I understand that this board is a much cheaper alternative. There are better built keyboards, there are keyboards with better RGB customization, there are keyboards with better stock keycaps, there's a keyboard with all of these things and Topper switches in the Real Force RGB, there are better looking floating key keyboards, but there aren't keyboards with all of these things combined, albeit with greater limitations, at a well under $200 price tag, which is where this keyboard comes in firmly. Also, if you want a black version with no floating keys, look up the G-Tune CHL5 XRGB. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.